Hello and welcome to this episode of T-Tech. This is part 1 of 3 in our Wi-Fi router series, and in this part we're going to cover basics about our ISP and our Wi-Fi router. I do hope you enjoy this one, and let's get into it. Hello and welcome to this episode of T-Tech. This is part 1 of 3 in our Wi-Fi router series. In this part, we're going to go over some terms that relate to our ISP, as well as how our network is going to be hooked together. So the first thing we need to talk about is the internet service provider. Now, they're the ones we're going to pay a fee every month, and they're going to give us internet access. So our Wi-Fi router isn't much help without them, so we need to know a little bit about them to understand what we need to get. So examples of internet service providers are, in my examples here, I have Spectrum. That was formerly Charter, Comcast, and AT&T. There is lots of others depending on where you live in the world, but the main idea is they're going to be using these technologies. Now, the way our internet service provider will connect us to the internet does vary, and that's what we would call our WAN types. Now, WAN stands for Wide Area Network. That'll be an important term later on. And those types can be cable, DSL, fiber, or satellite. Now, they all have their pros and cons as far as their availability, reliability in some cases, and of course, cost. Now, with the WAN type, you also have to worry about something called speed or bandwidth. Now, the speed or bandwidth is how much information we can send and receive with that internet connection. So you've all seen the commercials. They will say, okay, our starting speed is now 100 megabits per second or something like that. But that just means the amount of information. And these are the different types of WAN connections and their associated speeds. Now you will see DSLs on the low end with 1 to 25 megabits per second. Cable is somewhere in the middle with 25 to 100 megabits per second. Fiber is way up there at 1000 megabits per second or 1 gigabit per second. And of course you do pay a lot for that service, and it's not available everywhere. Now, satellite is really good in areas that like things like campgrounds or something where it's very hard to get a cable line or DSL or fiber. And they use these satellites up in space. Now, those do have a premium there of 1 to 12 megabits, and they are very high latency, so they can be quite a bit slower. Now, in addition to understanding those three basics, the other thing to be aware of is how ISPs have data caps. And that's very important, but the easiest way to relate it is like your cell phone plan. You have a connection on your cell phone that uses 3G or 4G. That connection gets you on the internet, just like DSL and cable and fiber do, but just in a different way technically. But they do monitor how much information you send over that connection and bill you accordingly. So if you do send more than the amount they let you, you will be charged extra though. But it can be the same thing with some providers, at least as far as I've seen with Spectrum, they do not do that. But you have to understand the speed in megabits per second is different from megabytes. All right, bytes is what's used like on your computer. If you have a file, let's say on your desktop, if you go on that file and just right click and go to properties, you'll see, for instance, 10 megabits. I'm sorry, I misspoke. 10 megabytes. But you won't usually ever really actually see bits. It's always bytes, that measurement. So, what you have to understand is megabits per second is how fast we can use our internet connection, whereas the data usage and caps is the usage over time, how much data we've actually sent over that connection over like a month's time, not per second. All right, that's different. So there is a difference there. And these are just some examples. You can have 5 gigabytes a month, gigabytes a month. It gets confusing when you're talking about bits and bytes and you misspeak. 10 gigabytes and 100 gigabytes and more than that. And a lot of them, at least with internet connections I've seen, are unlimited. Now, other than that, that's the basics of our internet service provider for what we need, what speed is, and what data caps are. Other than that, our actual setup, we're going to have this connection here, and once we decide what provider we want to use, they'll come in and they'll install a modem, and that modem, it is just going to use one of those WAN types we talked about, and our Wi-Fi router here is it can usually has external antennas. Some of them do, some of them don't, but it is sitting between the WAN, where this line is, and the LAN. Now, the LAN here just has all of your devices. So your laptops, tablets, desktops, and with the Internet of Things now, you can have thermostats, fridges, and all kinds of things connected to the Internet. But another thing you have to understand when you go on your Wi-Fi router is you're going to have IP addresses in something called a subnet mask. Now, these terms, for our purpose right now, an IP address is assigned to any device that wants to use the internet, and it just identifies that device. Okay? Just like our address identifies our house. Now, the way this works is a certain group of addresses will be on a certain network, just like a group of houses will be on a certain street. So all that means is everyone here in the 192.168.2.0/24 network, that basically means as long as these first 3 numbers here are the same, they're all in the same network. All right? And if the numbers are different, how up here on the WAN, they're 203.0.113.0/24. Those are our computers that are in a different street or network. But the basic idea is the ISP, they're going to call a technician out to your house, they're going to install a modem, and that modem will have an Ethernet cable. That Ethernet cable then connects from the modem to the WAN or internet port on your Wi-Fi router. And then from there, all your LAN devices can connect either wirelessly or with an Ethernet cable. Now, Ethernet cable will usually give higher speeds than wireless, but a lot of the IoT devices and smartphones don't give Ethernet connectivity, so you have to use wireless. So anyway, I do hope you enjoyed this one, and this was part 1 of 3 in our Wi-Fi router series. In the next part, we're going to go ahead and configure this, and we're going to configure the network name, the password, and the admin password for the router. I do hope you enjoyed this one. I'm Tyler with T-Tech, and have a nice day.